Hi guys, this week Allie and I will be presenting the readings of Chudi, Coffey and Miller, and Somers. To begin, I will be talking about the reading by Stephen Chudi, Alternatives to Grading Student Writing. The introduction of this reading discusses the degrees of freedom in assessment, evaluation, and grading. Chudi begins his introduction by telling a story about a math teacher, William Embeck, who gave students absurd assignments for extra credit. An example looks something like, push a peanut around the classroom with your nose for an hour. You'll get 30 extra points. Embeck claimed the assignments were character-building exercises to demonstrate guts and willingness to take risks, as he believed they were qualities that would have value outside of the math classroom. Chudi found this to be interesting, as he states on page 10 and 11, his grading scheme seemed a lot simpler and in some ways no more arbitrary and subjective than those devised by many of us more conventional elementary, secondary, and college writing teachers. Chudi has been on his own personal quest for alternatives to grading for over 30 years. He talks about his first year of college teaching at Northwestern University, where he taught practical rhetoric in a writing workshop style instead of a traditional course. They focused on the process of composing, from pre-writing to editing. He used a standard grading system in which C is classified as okay, B is classified as better, and A is classified as excellent. During the first round of grading, no one complained or said anything. After the second round of grading, he had student Julie, who got an A the first round and a B the second round. Chudi explained to her what she could have done better, and she got upset as she felt that she did the best that she could do. As a result of this, Julie didn't put much effort into the course after this, as she maintained C-level grades. This made Chudi regret the grading system for poisoning a student-teacher relationship. He never put a letter grade on student writing again. In response to this, Chudi tried a variety of alternatives to grading. He began with a self-assessment grading system where students assess themselves and argue for a grade that they want. He stopped doing this when a colleague accused him of doing what he didn't want to do, reduced the range of achievements to a letter grade. He also tried contract and performance-based systems, pass-fail and non-graded systems, holistic and analytic systems, scoring of portfolios. They all gave him the degree of freedom, which is what he calls it, to assess and respond to a student's writing, but they all had their limitations as well. Chudi had trouble creating his syllabus every semester as he found himself rearranging content to fit the grading system. This is why he joined the NCTE, Committee on Alternatives to Grading Student Writing. Chudi wanted to learn alternatives and approaches as he was on a quest to find the perfect grading system. He believed this system to be true to research on grading, consistent with current pedagogy, fair to students, and productive in moving students towards being highly motivated and skilled writers. The NCTE committee has not found this grading system yet, but believes that according to research, grading writing does not contribute to learning how to write. The committee instead would love to see grades disappear so that authentic assessment can be a focus. Some schools have already implemented an authentic assessment-based classroom. However, most teachers will be required to sum up work based on a criteria into a grade throughout their careers. The NCTE committee believes it essential to discern four interrelated terms with grading. From top to bottom, they are decreasing in degrees of freedom in evaluating a student's writing. Number 1, response. This is the heart of the process. Response is naturalistic as it draws directly from the reader's reaction to a text. It is beneficial in that a teacher can create productivity in the writing process with their responses. Chudi says that response gives an instructionally calculated reaction to student writing. This looks like feedback from peers, teachers, family members, etc. to make them better writers. Number 2, assessment. Assessment is more limited compared to response in terms of degrees of freedom. Assessment asks questions such as, how did this project turn out? Are you getting what you want from the audience? What are your ideas about making it more successful? It is beneficial in that it makes a writer more present in their writing. Number 3, evaluation. Evaluation implies a fixed criteria. It means to compare work against a standard. This type of grading can be harsh on students' confidence in writing. The best type of evaluation is constructive in criticism to truly bring out the best in your students. Number 4, grading. Grading is extremely limited in degrees of freedom. It condenses all of a student's work into a grade symbol like a letter grade. Grading is one-dimensional in that there are good and bad stereotypes based on the grade that a student receives. TCHUDI says on page 16, any grade less than an A destroys student morale to some extent, and even the prized A falsely implies that the student has reached some kind of perfection. This then causes students to be reluctant to internalize the great advice that they received from a teacher about writing. As you can see, as we get closer to the more standardized grading system, teachers lose their freedom to truly connect and teach their students to be skillful writers. TCHUDI says on page 17, if grading alternatives are to achieve their true potential for helping students and teachers think differently about writing, response, assessment, and evaluation, faculties need to work together systematically to develop, implement, and evaluate new approaches. It is up to teachers who want to make a change to collaborate and find alternatives to grading. These alternatives can make a difference in the way that students view and think about writing, as well as help teachers respond to the work of their students constructively. TCHUDI gives several ideas on alternatives, such as involving students in the response and assessment portion, using carefully articulate criteria, rewarding growth and effort as well as quality, large amounts of response to student writing, seeking real-world audiences, and focusing on writing as a whole on issues and/or topics that are important to the writer. So that was all I had on TCHUDI'S reading. The question I want you guys to answer for this week is, what alternative method to grading can you use for your content area? Give some examples to these methods. Next, I will be talking about the reading by Robert C. Calfee and Roxanne Greitz Miller, Best Practices in Writing Assessment for Instruction. Calfee and Miller use this chapter to discuss the ways the Common Core state standards are going to deal with writing assessment. They discuss the work that's done by the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers and the Smart Balance Assessment Consortium. Both of these associations are responsible for constructing the assessment systems for the Common Core state standards. The focus of this chapter is on formal assessment. The purpose of formal assessment is to monitor and guide instruction. The Common Core state standards was developed to establish nationwide expectations for student achievement, to make sure that all students are able to do the same level of work. Calfee and Miller state on page 352, the assessment consortia are establishing performance expectations for the Common Core state standards. If a standard requires students to learn to jump, the performance assessment lays out details for how high. There are a number of issues that must be addressed in order for changes to be made with formal assessment for the Common Core state standard. Some of these include discrepancies between what is taught, what is tested, and what counts. I'm sure most of you can relate to spending weeks on in-class projects that had nothing to do with what you were being tested on. Another issue is close reading isn't as emphasized as it used to be. This is necessary when writing is essential on the Common Core state standards. Students need to be able to read a text closely and take out the most important information to incorporate in their writing. Calfee and Miller offer a number of solutions to the issues previously stated. First, summative tests will include extended performance tasks that last over a week or more. This means that students from 3rd grade through high school will be assigned a writing assignment after being given a topic to study, allowing them time to review their final work. Second, digital libraries will be developed to aid teachers in planning and conducting formal assessments. According to Calfee and Miller, these libraries will contain released items, formative assessments, model content frameworks, instructional and formative tools and resources, student and educator tutorials and practice tests, scoring training modules, professional development materials, and interactive report generation systems. Calfee and Miller believe that these digital libraries will put more stress on the professional development and teacher collaboration items instead of test items. Third, states, districts, and teachers are looking to publishers to create curriculum and instruction packages that help students meet the standards. This will incorporate more informational texts and promote high-level comprehension strategies. Calfee and Miller state on page 355, there will be new opportunities for supplemental publishers to develop curriculum packages that complement the Basel series, especially in the areas of the reading-writing connection and integration of literacy and content areas. It is their hope that curriculum instruction packages feature text-based practices and formative assessment models with starters to monitor progress, check prior knowledge, and assess achievement at the end of a unit. unit. Lastly, Coffey and Miller plan to implement professional development programs for the Common Core state standards. The activities planned for these programs will be school and district-based, giving opportunities for students to use webinars. Coffey and Miller discussed 3 portraits of formative assessment within best practice in today's classroom. Samuel, who's in kindergarten, presented a show-and-tell report about his new baby sister. He was quite shy, and speaking in front of people was difficult for him. He announced that she had just gotten home from the hospital, and he didn't know what else to say after that. His teacher, Mrs. Hancock, scaffolded his answers by prompting him with questions such as, what did her hair look like? What did she do? Samuel responded to each question. During the conference, his teacher wrote 4 sentences using Samuel's words. The project was published in a weekly newsletter for parents, and the show-and-tell report would be the centerpiece of the parent-teacher conference. Samantha, who was a 5th grader, was assigned a research paper by her teacher, Mr. Butchers. Samantha needed to select a current events topic and find a reading about it. Mr. Butchers, a history teacher, taught his students historical analysis. This research paper is meant to study history in the making. Although this is early for students to start working on research papers, as they are typically introduced in middle school, he had confidence his students could complete this challenge successfully. Students will work in small groups, taking 2 to 3 weeks to complete the assignment. Lastly, Tom and Chizuko were seniors in high school. They were both studying for the SAT. They were both quite good at math and science, but were concerned about the writing portion because neither of them did well on the PSAT writing test. They both used advice from the College Board website, but were having trouble applying it. These 3 portraits are meant to show the variety of writing scenarios that students face in their classrooms today. Coffey and Miller state these are writing standards, but the responsibility for acquiring skills rests largely on students' shoulders. Page 357. They believe that as Common Core state standards are implemented, these situations need to be changed. Coffey and Miller believe that from the earliest stages, students should be engaged in both reading and writing in the purposes of literacy, to think and to communicate. Students need to be able to learn skills and strategies to handle print and are motivated by a clear purpose. Writing and writing assessment should be linked in schools to create academic outcomes. Each of the portraits are examples ranging from formative assessment to summative assessments. Summative assessments can be defined as standardized tests. They gauge what a student has learned at the end of a course and compare students and rank them. Formative assessments, according to Popham 2008, are assessments that guide instruction. They assess the skills and knowledge at the beginning of a school year and monitor individual progress. The practices of formative assessment begin with an authentic task, and the purpose and audience are clear and meaningful. Support and feedback are readily available, and the final product includes personal and academic value for the student. Coffey and Miller believe that teachers should view assessment as inquiry. Inquiry means to search or investigate. The first step in doing this is to think about the problem. For example, Ms. Hancock might have thought that Sam was nervous to speak in front of his class. The second step is to instruct and assess. To do this, Ms. Hancock guided Sam by scaffolding him by prompting questions. She was then able to assess how well he would do when talking about each question. The third step is to analyze and evaluate. Ms. Hancock provided evidence to evaluate when she wrote down notes during his presentation and while she scaffolded his presentation with questions. This then sets her up to be able to analyze what she can do as a teacher to aid him. Some questions Coffey and Miller offer are, what does the story tell about what Sam knows and can do? What might be the next most useful steps instructionally? Lastly, we must review, reflect, and report. In order to do this, there must be a concrete record of the activity and the result. Then reflect on what can be done with this information. Lastly, report the outcomes to audiences such as parents and other teachers. To sum this up, Coffey and Miller state on page 360, literacy provides an essential toolkit or machine shop for the construction process. Best practices for writing assessment. Check the status of the kit. The tools need to be in good shape and the user must know how to use them effectively. My question to you guys is, what does assessment as inquiry look like for your content area? Please give examples. Next, Allie will share her summary on the second half of the reading.
The next section of Coffey and Miller's article discusses text-based writing. The Common Core has a set of strict standards for writing in which students can write arguments to support claims from an analysis of substantive topics or texts, to write informative or explanatory text to examine and convey complex ideas and information through the effective selection, organization, and analysis of content, presumably from text, and to write narratives to develop real or imagined experiences from events. Coffey and Miller provide an example of a text-based writing assignment in which Common Core standards are used. A student is tasked with reading a passage entitled My Pet, Bobby the Boa. The story describes a young girl, Susan, and her pet boa constrictor. They are then told, suppose your parents had given you a pet snake. Based on Susan's story, describe what it would be like to take care of the snake and to have fun with it as a pet. According to Coffey and Miller, this writing allows students to express their individualities, but often grounds the task in the text. This task generates information about content and quality in which a teacher can gauge how well students can take in information and use critical thinking skills to communicate their ideas. Once students complete their text-based writing assignments, it is up to the teacher to assess what they have written and their abilities overall as a writer. Text-based assignments allow for students to communicate what they know about a specific subject matter, but there may be a few issues with the way in which their knowledge is assessed. According to Coffey and Miller, potential problems include how students must write well enough to capture what they have to say, meaning some students don't write to the same abilities that others do, and someone ultimately has to handle evaluation tasks, meaning who is to judge how well a student can communicate their ideas through writing. The Common Core standards call for a combination of content and literacy, but the problem is how to actually quantify their writing abilities. The main goal of the Common Core for students is to demonstrate their knowledge about school subjects by composing well-written essays. Coffey and Miller refer to a 6 traits plus 1 model utilized in assessing writing. The 6 traits plus 1 are ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, conventions, and presentation. Ideas refer to the central focus or theme, relevant details, anecdotes, or similar features, all featured within a piece of writing. Organization refers to the order and layout of the paper are coherent, communicate focus or theme. Voice refers to whether or not the writer speaks directly to the reader or is aware of an audience. Word choice is simply the vocabulary within the piece of writing and whether or not they are appropriate and applicable. Sentence fluency refers to whether or not the words flow and proper grammatical conventions are used. Conventions refer to spelling, grammar, punctuation, and paragraphs, and presentation refers to the overall visual appeal of a piece of writing. While the 6 traits plus 1 model might seem helpful to teachers, there may be some problems with it. In regards to voice is both important and challenging in classroom writing. For serious writing in high school and beyond, a clear sense of purpose and awareness of audience are critical requirements for any writing assignment. Many times, many writing prompts do not address this, and students are usually aware that the only audience that they have is just the teacher. Length. Students should know about the perils of not enough and situations where too much can be a problem. Many times, teachers do not include a length requirement while others do. The nature of the assignment is way more important than the length, and teachers do not take this into consideration. Genre. Distinguishing between narrative and informal writing, between stories and reports, is an important first step, and students could benefit from greater clarity in the distinction between these two, especially given the emphasis on distinction within the Common Core standards. Sometimes students may not be able to distinguish the kind of genre they need to utilize, unless specified by the teacher. Content and substance. What rubrics might be used to evaluate the content? Also, the teacher needs to take into consideration whether or not the student stayed on topic, all while students can talk about a range of things while staying within the parameters of the subject. The Common Core standards provides clear standards for assessment, but actually implementing them may be a challenge. How can we create dynamic assessment systems for curriculum-embedded writing? Coffey and Miller propose a solution to issues teachers may face culminating with assessment. They refer to 3 building blocks that may ease the burden of assessment: prompts, procedures, and rubrics. When crafting a writing prompt, teachers should include 4 different concepts: focus, audience, form, and criteria. Teachers should develop a focus statement. This allows students to see the key topic for the composition, including purpose. The teacher should identify the audience. This can allow for students to imagine various audiences other than the teacher. They should specify the form. What kind of format is the writing? Is it a paragraph or a letter? Those are just some examples. Identify the specific criteria. What are you, as the teacher, looking for? During the actual writing process, teachers should allow for certain procedures: time, topic, words, and social support. Teachers should provide students with time. Writing is a lengthy process, and students should be provided ample opportunity to do so. They should be provided information about the topic. Information should be readily available for access by students who can incorporate it into their writing. Provide words. Provide students with an environment in which they can look up and see words or phrases that they can use in their writing, and also allow for social support. Teachers should be readily available to help students with the writing process, answer questions, and give ideas. Also, maybe allow for a peer review session. Once a student has finished composing their text, rubrics are used to judge and grade it. There are two types of rubrics. Holistic rubrics are rubrics in which multiple judges read and rate a single paper based on a benchmark sample. A problem with this is that judges can disagree on ratings and make the grading process even harder. Analytic rubrics provide an in-depth analysis of a paper and discuss what is working and what does not. These types of rubrics are more complex and time-consuming. Question for you: what type of rubric would you use in your own classroom, and why? The writing process and its assessment has various challenges and opportunities for the teacher, but most importantly, the students. According to Coffey and Miller, writing reveals thinking. The capacity to lay out one's understanding in a clear, organized, and compelling fashion is an essential tool for thinking and for communication. Effective and efficient assessment is critical. Writing assignments are of limited value unless they are accompanied by informed and informative feedback on both the process and the content of the compositions. In sum, teachers need to implement writing into classrooms with the ability to provide ample and proactive feedback. Teachers need to understand that the validity of assessments is grounded in genuine performance activities, in which they can provide their students the benefits of these opportunities and resources. Teachers need to create a cohesive plan in which students can write and be assessed that applies to all students, not just some. For students, writing is a key means of asserting and defending claims, showing what they know about a subject, and conveying what they might have experienced, imagined, thought, and felt. In the article Responding to Student Writing, Nancy Somers discusses the ways teachers comment on student writing, the issues that arise when doing so, and potential solutions to the problems. Think about a time when you handed in an assignment and it took weeks for you to get your grade back and feedback back from the teacher. This is due to the fact that commentary from teachers takes time. Responding to each individual paper takes about 20 to 40 minutes per paper, multiplied by the amount of students in the class. While you would think 20 to 40 minutes per paper would call for extremely responsive and critical feedback, are the comments teachers provide students actually effective? There are so many reasons as to why teachers provide feedback and commentary on the work their students hand into them. According to Somers, we know that we comment on our students' writing for the same reasons professional editors comment on the work of professional writers, or for the same reasons we ask our colleagues to read and respond to our own writing. When a student composes a paper, their main goal is to respond to a prompt or question, and convey their thoughts and ideas in a way that is comprehensible to the audience or person reading the paper. Commentary by teachers based on student writing is supposed to allow for critical review of whether or not the student has properly communicated their ideas, and whether or not the reader of the paper notices anything the writer missed or any questions they may have. Many times, students write in a way that is comprehensible to themselves, but may not be to others. According to Somers, the commentary provided should dramatize the presence of a reader to help students to become that questioning reader themselves. This means that when a student is aware that someone is going to be reading their paper, they will write in a way that is comprehensible to others, not just themselves. And ultimately, the most important reason teachers provide commentary to students is to offer assistance during the writing process rather than after it's over. If done properly, teacher commentary can help students in various ways. Ways such as providing constructive criticisms, raising questions that the writer may not have addressed, preventing revision in the narrow and predictable way that students do when they do not have feedback, and ultimately telling students if their writing has conveyed and communicated the messages it was intended to do. There are many ways that teachers can comment on writing, but seemingly the most standard way is for teachers to actually edit a hard copy of a paper and revise it with written comments. This image is an example of a paragraph in which a student submitted it to the teacher in hopes of getting meaningful feedback. Think about how you would feel if you receive this paper back from your teacher. It seems very confusing and jumbled together. Let's take a deeper look into some of the actual feedback the teacher provided the student. If you look closely at the comments the teacher made, you will find that the commentary based on the errors in usage, diction, and style are the most frequent. Somers refers to these types of errors as accidents of discourse. The definition of discourse is written or spoken communication. In this particular example, the teacher seems to focus more on grammatical errors rather than discussing the message of a paper as a whole. This can confuse students. There are two types of comments on this example, those being marginalized comments and interlinear comments. The interlinear comments are those actually written within the lines of the paper, written horizontally, and the marginalized comments are on the sides, written vertically in the margins. The comments in the margins provide general comments about the entire body of writing as a whole, whereas the linear comments focus on conventional errors. The student who wrote this paper might find these comments to be in equal importance as to what they need to fix, as the teacher did not actually place any emphasis on what needs to be fixed first and ultimately what is more important to fix. According to Somers, these different signals given to students to edit and develop, to condense and elaborate, represent also the failure of teachers' comments to direct genuine revision of the text as a whole. While teachers may think that they are providing valuable feedback to their students, they may cause more harm than good to the integrity of the paper and the students' writing abilities. In regards to the example on the previous slide, there is no scale of concern, meaning that the teacher did not place any emphasis on what needs to be fixed before anything else. By writing comments on specific areas, students may see their writing as pieces rather than as a cohesive discourse. When teachers provide commentary to this extent, students may feel that after they correct everything the teacher said to, that their writing process is finished. However, revision is a constant process. Additionally, teachers often provide the same generalized comments for all papers that they receive, whether it be to save time or because all students are making the same errors. Somers refers to these generalized comments as rubber-stamped comments because if the teacher made a stamp, they could use it for all the papers they receive. When students revise their papers based on teacher commentary, they run the risk of making the paper even worse than it was before. Somers refers to a concept known as process and product. She states what one has to say about the process is different from what one has to say about the product. This refers to the fact that many teachers provide commentary as if the paper is a finished copy and is not going to be further revised. The comments they provide do not allow for students to think about why their paper is flawed. The vocabulary teachers use in the comments do not allow for further revision in that it is reminiscent of justifying a grade. Somers proposes various ways in which teachers can overhaul the ways they comment on student papers in order to promote constructive revision. On the left side are some of the errors teachers fail to realize when they comment, and on the right are the solutions to the problems. Teachers are often trained to look at writing work with a literary lens and to look for merit. However, students are not trained or knowledgeable to the same degree teachers are in regards to literacy. Teachers read student papers with the mindset that they will comment on what they should have done rather what they did do. Teachers need to understand that not all students can write up to standard and take this into account. Possible solutions to these issues include reversing the approach in which teachers use to read and judge student writing. Teachers should stay away from using comments involving correcting basic grammatical conventions, such as add a comma or add a period. There are more important things, such as the overall message the student is trying to convey, rather than if they have a comma in the correct spot. Teachers should also read students' papers with a student mindset. How would a 12-year-old student read this paper, rather than a teacher with a master's degree in English literacy? Teachers should also encourage a multi-step revision process. This in turn will allow students to become better writers over time and be open up to critical feedback. A question relating to the reading is, Somers presented various solutions to fix the errors in which teachers comment on their students' papers. Do you think these truly help fix the problem? In what ways would you respond to a student's paper?